Welcome to Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. What a difference a week makes. Financial markets have flipped their bets for a November rate cut from unlikely to around 70% likely. The potential good news for borrowers has been driven by bad news on jobs after the unemployment rate jumped to a near 4-year high, as Rihanna Whitson reports.
After a string of high-profile layoffs, competition for jobs in growth sectors is heating up.
We have about 5 roles. That's a mixture of technical roles as well as business development roles to help to capture a bigger market and continue the growth that we're on.
This cybersecurity startup is hiring and has its pick of candidates.
I think generally right now it's an employer's market. We look for people that have industrial knowledge, engineering backgrounds, given the work we do.
It is an employer's market. Unemployment jumped to 4.5% in September, the highest rate in almost 4 years. 33,900 people joined the jobless queue and just 14,900 extra people secured a job, which is not enough to keep up with population growth. More people also decided to look for work, pushing up the participation rate.
What we have, of course, seen is that numbers do jump up and down from month to month.
The Reserve Bank had forecast the unemployment rate would only be 4.3% by the end of the year.
Employment growth has been very slow this year, and yet there remains a lot of job vacancies out there. It does suggest that at some level there is some mismatch between the skills that employers are looking for and the current skills that job seekers have.
Financial markets now think it's more likely than not the Reserve Bank will cut interest rates when it meets next month because of the jump in the jobless rate, providing welcome relief to borrowers, but bittersweet for those who also find themselves out of work.
The RBA would be foolish if they didn't cut rates when they meet in November on Melbourne Cup Day. The RBA needs to provide sufficient support to households and businesses to ensure that the unemployment rate doesn't increase and we avoid recession.
Okay guys, are you ready to do this meeting?
Yes.
This small business owner says every rate cut helps. Her small but growing team provides support to tradespeople.
I think that would be good. I think that would really continue to get everybody sort of back in the real swing of business again and sort of get people starting to want to spend money.
Something economists say would also save jobs.
To the share market, which set a fresh record this week before retreating. By the end of the session on Friday, the ASX 200 index added 0.4% and the All Ords gained 0.3% for the week. Kyle Rodda from Capital.com joined me. Kyle, financial market expectations for a rate cut in November have risen, but that could change with the quarterly inflation data out in just under 2 weeks, couldn't it?
It certainly could, and that weak jobs report pulled forward the expectations of the timing of the next RBA cut. Basically, the markets are pricing in a 100% chance that the RBA cuts in December, maybe 70 or 80 for November at the moment. But the critical question is whether inflation is behaving, because recent CPI indicator reports have pointed to the fact that maybe inflation is running a little bit higher than where the RBA had projected in its statement of monetary policy recently. And as a result, there's less leeway for the central bank to be able to cut interest rates, at least comfortably. So at the moment, again, the markets are back towards focusing on the labour market or the employment side of the RBA's mandate and, sort of using that to justify imminent rate cuts. But it really does depend on what happens with this official CPI print at the end of the month.
Now, when it comes to US-China tensions, they're intensifying. This week, China accusing the US of stoking panic over its rare earth controls. And Australian rare earths miners have been caught up in a sell-off at the end of the week.
Yeah, I would say that there's a kind of an element of canary in the coal mine-ness when it comes to rare earth stocks. They rallied significantly when China threatened these curbs, mostly because if that were to happen to occur, China is the biggest producer and exporter of rare earths across the world, and it would leave a significant supply gap for the US to try and fill, given that those minerals are incredibly important to the US economy. So it was beneficial to some of these rare earth companies in Australia that we may be in a position to sort of fill that gap, although not entirely. But effectively, it just sort of goes to show you the strategic competition between the US and China at the moment. The fact that, effectively sort of trade wars may go silent for a little while, but they never disappear. And these kind of very critical leverage point issues like rare earths are ones that, obviously the Chinese are very willing to use to try and, effectively gain leverage over the US in negotiations. So incredibly significant. It's the reason why markets were a bit jittery this week. And although we did see that sell-off in rare earths at the end of the week for the ASX 200, they were broadly higher since this news broke.
When it comes to gold miners, though, they rallied at the end of the week as this gold rush continues.
Absolutely, and there's signs, I would argue, of mania in the market at the moment. A lot of sort of trend following and momentum pushing prices higher. But there's considerable concerns now, obviously this week with geopolitics and what's happening between the US and China. But there's also fears about government deficits around the world and economies being run too hot next year, especially with inflation already above target, and possibly central banks looking the other way when it comes to above target inflation and still cutting rates in the future. So there's a multitude of reasons for gold rallying at the moment. The momentum is incredibly strong. Like I said, it's almost a bit of a sort of a herd mentality at the moment in the rush to buy some of it. But the gold sector in Australia has basically been the shining light for the whole year. It's up by more than 100% year to date. And I mean, at the moment, it's almost like a steam train when it comes to the price action and almost a fool's errand to try and get in the way of it.
Well, the US government shutdown is dragging on, but we're still expecting to get the US inflation data out next week.
We are, and effectively that's because there is some, tax indexation that the government needs to be able to do and that's why the CPA data is required. It could be really critical because over the last few weeks, the markets have experienced a little bit of a vacuum when it comes to data. No jobs data a few weeks ago, no CPI data this week, and that's meant that things like gold have been able to rally. The markets haven't really been able to test the thesis that the Fed will be cutting interest rates in October and December and below potentially 3% next year, as is currently priced in. So one expects that, if the shutdown doesn't end before then, that this CPI data could be a really significant market moving event if it shows, maybe that things are a little bit too hot on the price growth front. If that happens to occur, maybe some of those cuts come out of the market, maybe some more volatility enters the equation too. It'll be really critical. Notwithstanding that, we've also got the Fed coming up shortly after that. So there's, some really critical issues here that could sort of, test the market's resolve at the moment. So a big deal, and it'll be, really kind of overdue once we do get that data.
Absolutely. Kyle, Rodda, thank you so much.
Thanks.
With just 6 million people, Singapore is one of the smallest countries in the world and one of the wealthiest. But the prosperity of the trade-exposed hub is also being buffeted by Donald Trump's trade war. The ABC's Global Affairs editor Laura Tingle sat down with Singapore's Prime Minister, who says a single Southeast Asian market could help counter the US threat.
These are some of the things that you make?
Yeah. Like many businesses, this 3D manufacturing company is waiting to see what the fallout from Donald Trump's tariffs will be on Singapore.
A lot of customers, companies are holding back due to the uncertainty. So they go to a clinician and then they get a custom-made 3D printed helmet.
Jason Dew says many firms have begun moving their manufacturing hubs in response to US trade policy.
So Singapore, we are in a good position to be providing that services for nearshoring as well as just-in-time manufacturing.
Business groups say nations are reconfiguring their supply chains.
China, even from the last set of tariffs, had redirected investments into Mexico, Vietnam, Malaysia, but those are now under scrutiny by the US authorities. So I think there's a lot of caution around that.
Perhaps no country on earth is as vulnerable to the changes in that order flowing from Donald Trump's Liberation Day tariffs as Singapore, the ultimate trading nation.
Singapore is a fantastic logistics hub for the region and globally, and uncertainty doesn't help that sort of area.
Like Australia, Singapore faces a base tariff of 10%, but it's bracing for more.
We are very concerned. Now we are discussing with our American counterparts on the sectoral tariffs, pharmaceuticals and semiconductors. The discussions are still underway, and hopefully we might get a good landing in that area. But regardless, we do expect an impact on our economy.
The president of the Australian Chamber of Commerce here is assessing the numbers.
Singapore had a growth rate in the first half of above 4%, but I think the MIT, the government departments are expecting year-on-year growth to be more in about the 2%.
The pharmaceuticals one is a big concern, right? Because that's a major export, as far as we're concerned, over to the US. But there's a larger dynamic at work as well.
The Trump administration has imposed higher tariffs on Singapore's neighbours, with heavy import duties on Myanmar and Laos, while Cambodia and Vietnam have been hit particularly hard because so many of their exports go to the US. In comparison, Singapore has technically got off lightly.
Up to now, we've not felt the impact very much. That's partly because many companies, I think, have been front-loading their activities. But we do see signs of business spending and confidence coming down. And I think more than the tariffs alone, it's the uncertainty that's causing businesses to hold back any new investments. And that will surely impact the external environment. And because we are so dependent on external demand, it will surely impact our economy in the coming months and including into next year.
The US president's tariffs have also prompted some soul-searching among Southeast Asian nations about how they collectively respond to the challenge.
We in Southeast Asia also have to do our part to make ourselves a more attractive single market. There's still a lot of work to be done because ASEAN, it's virtually tariff-free, but it's not an easy place to do business. It's complex. There are non-tariff barriers for investments, and we have to work even harder to bring all these down.
Meaning regional integration, closer economic ties, linking up infrastructure, and even connecting payment systems.
I hope that, given that, it's really a wake-up call for the regional countries to say, look, as much as we want and should continue engaging with the United States, not only do we not want to put all our eggs in that basket, we want to maybe reduce the number of eggs in that basket and spread it around.
Then there's the economic uncertainty associated with another aspect of US policy, a potential conflict over Taiwan, and any economic shocks that follow.
Don't even need to think about kinetic conflict. Even if a very sharp downturn in relations, if economic blockade or whatever it is, that will already have quite significant impact on the region, simply because of how interconnected we are with East Asia in general and with Taiwan. I mean, everyone knows the semiconductor story. If something happens there, it's very difficult for us to insulate ourselves.
Part of that risk will lie in the US and China demanding the region take a side.
We certainly don't want to. We would rather not. We don't want to be in that position. But that is a reality that we need to come to terms with.
Highlighting that as the world becomes more unstable, the risks aren't just strategic, but economic.
There are growing questions about whether Qantas should be slapped with hefty fines for the cyber attack that led to the personal data of nearly 6 million of its customers being spilled on the dark web. The government says the responsibility lies with the airline, but affected customers say they've been left to fend for themselves. Rihanna Whitson again.
Frustration as Qantas customers react to news their personal data is on the dark web.
It was completely a shock, and the fact is, they're meant to be the national carrier, and all they've just done is mishandle everyone's stuff. So it's just disappointing, and honestly, it's not good enough.
You kind of have to just be more careful for, phishing or emails or phone messages or whatever it is. You nearly can't trust anyone that contacts you anymore.
The personal information of 5.7 million Qantas customers, including frequent flyer numbers, names and email addresses, was stolen in July. Cyber criminals tricked an airline call centre worker in the Philippines into handing over access to the information on third-party platform Salesforce. E.B. Gannon's personal data was on it.
I still haven't had any communication directly from Qantas about what's happened. It creates yet another mess that individuals have to clean up because corporates aren't doing their job properly.
With the airline refusing to pay compensation. Qantas is one of 40 global firms linked to Salesforce, Hackers posted the data after its ransom demand wasn't met.
No one should go looking for it on the dark web. It's illegal to access it, so even if you're looking for your own material, don't.
The Office of the Australian Information Commissioner would not comment on whether Qantas will be fined over the data hack. Experts say with the airline recently reporting a $1.6 billion full-year profit, the size of any penalty must be enough to teach Qantas and other companies a lesson.
The key lesson is to prioritise security over trying to maximise profits for shareholders.
Cybersecurity expert Matt Warren says the case against the airline could be complex if it tried to blame Salesforce or say Australian laws don't apply.
So you've then got that legal issue about the crime didn't actually occur in Australia, it occurred in the Philippines.
The fact that Qantas had outsourced this function to another company does not mean that they had outsourced their obligations. They still had the obligation as a company, and you can't simply outsource to other companies and think suddenly you've got no obligations on cybersecurity. You still do.
Qantas hasn't fronted the cameras since the hackers released the data, saying it's investigating what's on the dark web. This customer wants the airline to be accountable.
They should be fined properly. Once there's an example made out of a business in Australia, others will learn that we need to invest in keeping people's stuff safe.
Yet another reputational blow for the flying kangaroo.
The way people are searching for information online has quietly but fundamentally changed. Thanks to AI, the Google search has become Google Answer. Google's pivot to AI overviews is providing complete answers before anyone needs to click a link, with US research showing about 60% of searches now end on the AI summary. Digital marketing expert Elliot Dean from Temerity Digital joined me. Elliot Dean, welcome to Close of Business.
Hi Alicia, thanks for having me.
Now, it's been described as a change from Google Search to Google Answer. How big a shift is this?
The search landscape has changed quite a lot over the last 12 months. Obviously, traditional SEO has always been somebody enters a query into Google and then they get a number of links and they click through to websites and engage with them. And now we're seeing AI overviews coming up, which is basically a summary of the question being answered, and then essentially it's all being answered for the user within Google search. So visitors aren't actually going through to websites a lot of the time to get their information.
Do you have a view about what Google's endgame could be here? Because it seems it could be cannibalising its own ad revenue, or do you think it could end up just putting ads into the overview it produces?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think potentially they're looking more around monetising, because they've got their own AI overview as well, because obviously there's ChatGPT and Claude and Perplexity and a number of other AI search channels. So I think Google, in the short term, they're doing the AI overviews with traditional search to try and get people in the AI mode, but they're going to switch to their own AI, which is Gemini, probably in the near future. So I think that in itself, the other ones such as ChatGPT or the others actually have a subscription model. And I think they might go down a subscription model as well, where they actually charge users for a premium plan, where they can then essentially get better feedback through the AI search.
Elliot, what types of businesses are being hardest hit by this change currently?
Media outlets and blog websites are probably the most hardest hit, and that's because they're informational websites which are easily transformed into an overview that AI puts forward, so people can digest that information without having to go to another website. Whereas with service-related businesses, people are looking for a specific service, so they don't necessarily just want to trust AI with that. They want to go to the websites, find out more about a business, and then decide if they trust them.
Do we have any metrics or even anecdotal evidence about just how much traffic some businesses are losing as a result of this search change?
Yeah, absolutely. So there are businesses, there's studies have showed that some businesses have lost 50, 60, 70, even 80% of website traffic from organic search, which is obviously massive and it can really impact them. So that's something that's really a concern to a lot of people out there. So it's something that needs to be looked at carefully.
SEO, or search engine optimization, used to be the main game, but It appears to be dying away, at least at the moment. How do businesses approach this new future?
SEO is definitely still very important, at least at the moment, because a lot of traditional search is still making up a massive amount of the searches online. So yeah, it's definitely important that businesses invest in SEO, especially while there's still so much traditional search happening. But at the same time, they need to integrate strategies that help them optimize with AI as well. And a number of things that it might include are basically making sure their websites are structured in a way that resonates with the AI format, which can involve having well-structured headings, dot points, good short content. They should be looking to increase website content a lot, so put out regular blogs that are informative and enticing to their audience. They should also look at expanding their digital ecosystem as well.
So as more consumers shift to an AI-assisted search, is it inevitable more businesses will see a gradual decline in visibility and relevance on the web?
Absolutely. So like you said now, currently the search results have a certain amount of people on them, but now there's going to be less and less people in the AI space that actually get put forward from AI. So businesses are going to struggle, and they're probably going to have to evolve, and just some people just aren't going to get ranking well in the AI search. So some things they can do, like CNN, they've actually gone and got over 1 million WhatsApp users now who they regularly market to. And they've got an email newsletter they send out to them. So small businesses can basically look at trying to build an audience that they control themselves, so they're not at the whim of AI. And I think another interesting thing as well is a lot of people don't like AI and they sort of want to repel against it. So I kind of feel that traditional marketing might make a bit of a comeback as well for some people. So I think even just the old school, going out, handing out flyers, going to community events and being involved in your community and sponsorship, things like that, I feel that could actually make a comeback for some businesses that do struggle to resonate in the AI space.
Elliot Dean, thank you so much for your time.
No worries, Alicia, thank you.
It's been an unlucky week for the boss of poker machine giant Ainsworth Game Technology. CEO Harold Newman resigned with immediate effect after a nightmare hearing with the Nevada Gaming Control Board in the US. In a damning finding, the board concluded Mr. Newman was unsuitable to hold a licence in the world's most influential gaming jurisdiction. US officials called the pokies boss evasive and arrogant, with one saying his whole attitude stinks. Many of us will be familiar with the concept of a poverty line, but anti-poverty advocates say Australia is falling short when it comes to measuring poverty. They're calling on the government to adopt a multidimensional index to track and reduce the number of people who are going without. Daniel Ziffer reports.
Tamara knows she's poor because of the dread she feels when her supermarket trolley is tallied up.
I'm wondering if I'm going to be able to afford what's left in it. And sometimes experiencing the embarrassment and the shame of having to remove items out of the trolley that I can no longer afford.
With 2 daughters, she worries her situation will become theirs.
Struggling with feeling like you've failed your children is gut-wrenching.
That pain is real. The government estimates 14% of the population, roughly 1 in 7 people, live in poverty, the highest level since 2001. But when we look at poverty, Australia doesn't have an agreed measure of what it is.
So yeah, it's definitely about more than income.
Advocates want a multi-dimensional index to firstly track and then reduce the number of people living in it.
Poverty is about more than income. It's also about a lack of access or affordability to essential services like health, housing, education and employment, a lack of social connection.
Currently, Australia just measures income, not other elements that will help us understand how to fix the problem.
About 160 countries around the world have official poverty measures today, either a monetary measure or a multidimensional measure. Best practice is to have both, and Australia has neither.
50 years ago, the landmark Henderson Review set a measure that became known as the poverty line.
Professor, what exactly do you mean by poverty? What's your description of it?
My description would be that the income of a family is insufficient for its needs.
But the world's changed, and the 1970s family model of a male breadwinner and few women in work has changed as well. So too, Australia's housing market and the concept of full employment. Ronald Henderson Senior Research Fellow, Dr Milik Sijambayram, says current measures are inconsistent.
Some, for instance, include housing costs before they define the poverty line, whereas others might deduct it. Some take into account the composition of the household and the size of the household, while others don't.
Dr Sijambayram says a multi-dimensional index would give us deeper insight. She cites the example of two people with the same income, but one is a parent with a child who has a disability.
If we use an income-only measure, then those two individuals would look like they're equally poor, and the challenges of the single mum would be invisible in the eyes of the system.
International experience reveals there are measures that give better indication of change, like the impact of inflation in the price of groceries or housing.
With a multidimensional poverty measure, it measures things that government interventions can change. And when these changes happen, immediately, that year, the multidimensional poverty changes.
Canada and New Zealand have adopted the measures in the past decade.
And they've adopted national poverty reduction strategies as part of that. And they've seen quite significant reductions in poverty since those official measures were introduced.
The government's advisory body on the adequacy of welfare has recommended the government legislate the measures, as well as annual reporting. But Treasurer Jim Chalmers didn't answer questions from the ABC about it.
We're essentially a wealthy country compared to some, and some of our residents are doing it really tough.
Tamara doesn't want anyone to feel the stigma, isolation and shame that she does.
But unless you've lived in my shoes, you don't know the struggles.
In a nation where everyone is meant to count.
And that's all from Close of Business. I'm Alicia Barry. Thanks for watching.